Me now, Congressman Schiff, Democrat from California, and member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, and former Congressman Patrick Murphy, Democrat from Pennsylvania. He's the first Iraq war veteran elected to Congress. Thank you both for coming on the show tonight.
You bet. Thank you.
Congressman Schiff, you're on the Intelligence Committee. What can you tell us about any intervention in Syria at this point?
Well, I can tell you that there is substantial evidence that Assad used chemical weapons. This is not the first time the regime has used chemical weapons. There are still some gaps that I think need to be filled, and I, for one, want to see the clinical evidence that the United Nations and our agencies are gathering. But there's very substantial evidence, and I think the President is right that this is something that the international community must hold the regime accountable for. It has to be done in consultation with our allies, and I can certainly understand the President wanting to get this right. The specter of Iraq hangs over all of our heads. We want to make sure that the intelligence is solid, that we're going on the basis of good information if we go, and if there are military strikes. I think he's also right that they need to be focused on the chemical weapons threat and not become an effort to topple the regime. We don't want to get entangled in this civil war. So I think the President is doing this in a thoughtful, analytical way, and that's exactly what he has to do.
Former Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld said that the President hasn't justified action in Syria. Listen to this.
One thing that's very interesting, it seems to me, is that there really hasn't been any indication from the administration as to what our national interest is with respect to this particular situation.
How do you respond to that, Congressman Murphy?
Well, Reverend Al, I tell you, this is a solemn moment right now in our country. We're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to figure this out, our military leaders, our commander-in-chief. So you would think at this time, during this defining moment, that Rummy would have the decency to keep his mouth shut, but he just can't help himself. And I think it's a real disservice to our country when we should be coming together right now and not trying to point fingers here and there.
Let me ask you, Congressman Schiff, the Parliament just voted in England not to go into an intervention perceived as a defeat for Prime Minister Cameron there. Do you have any sense if your colleagues were called back into session where the Congress would go on this, or are we too early in these kinds of considerations?
Well, that's a really good question, and I think the Speaker should call us back into session. I think we ought to be meeting and discussing.
You do think the Speaker should call you all back in?
I do. I think we should come back into session. We should be in thorough consultation with the executive. I've had access to the intelligence, but members that are not on the Intelligence Committee have not. And I think, by and large, they should come back into town. They should review the intelligence, and we should have a full discussion about this. And I think that call should have gone out already. Where the Congress would be ultimately probably depends on the quality of that intelligence and whether it is confirmed that chemical weapons have been used. The President's decision, I have to say, just got much more difficult given what happened in the British Parliament. I think it's extraordinarily important that this be done in combination with other nations because it has to be an international taboo on the use of chemical weapons. It can't just be the United States saying that this violates the norm, this violates the laws of war. The international community has to decide to hold this regime accountable, and I think that just got more difficult with the vote in the British Parliament.
Because the reason I asked you twice about you do think the Speaker should call the session back, call Congress back in session, is Speaker Boehner sent a note to the President. He sent a letter saying that the President should make the case to the American people and Congress for how potential military action will secure American national security interests. But even after sending that letter, as of right now, you have no indication that Speaker Boehner is in fact calling people back to session. At this point, this is just a letter that really has no action attached to it by Speaker Boehner.
I think that's right. I've seen no indication that the Speaker is prepared to call us back into session, and perhaps that letter is his way of avoiding calling us back into session and placing the burden on the President to communicate to all of us during this recess. But I think given the gravity of the situation, given the stakes that are involved, members should be called back from their districts. This is something we should be debating just as the British Parliament has. There's a difficult constitutional question about whether we need a vote of approval here. Right. But whether we have a vote or we have consultation, either way, I think the members ought to be back at their desks.
Now, Congressman Murphy, you talked about this is a time Americans should be coming together. But some on the right, like Senator Ted Cruz, have tried already to use Syria as a political football. Listen to this.
Fundamentally, actually, these two issues, you look at Syria, you look at Obamacare, and they're tied together. They're tied together by an arrogance of this administration that they don't believe they're accountable to the American people, and they are going to jam their agenda down the throats of the American people.
That's Senator Ted Cruz already raising this while talking on the radio show of the head of the Republican Party, Rush Limbaugh. So, Congressman, your response to Ted Cruz, Patrick Murphy.
Reverend, when Ted Cruz talks about accountability and shoving things down, it gets my Irish up, because Congress wants to punt the ball. You hear Congressman Adam Schiff, who's a great member of Congress. Him and I served on that Intel committee together. He's being thoughtful. He's saying, let's get back together. Let's come together. Let's figure out the evidence. Let's see where it takes us before we act. The Republicans, John Boehner, Ted Cruz, they just want to keep throwing grenades over at Barack Obama and pointing fingers. Why don't they come back to Washington? Why don't we come together? Because right now, President Obama has 3 audiences. He does have the American people. But secondly, he has the Congress of the United States, where in that Constitution that Ted Cruz and the Tea Party folks want to keep citing, Congress has the authority to declare war or these acts of war, not the president. So why isn't Congress getting back in and figuring that out? And thirdly, the United Nations Security Council. Rev, we should call for an emergency national security meeting to get on the record, Russia and China, where they're going to stand when these war crimes, when these weapons are used against women and children and are being slaughtered. Where are they when it comes down to the Assad regime?
And it's interesting, Congressman Schiff, when you have Cruz trying to tie Obamacare and Syria together and making some political point like the president is stepping over the bounds. Last time I looked, you're a member of Congress, Obamacare was the law and upheld by the Supreme Court. What is he talking about?
Well, that's exactly right, and it is pretty amazing when you can bring Obamacare or health care and tie it in with Syria. I wouldn't have thought that was even rhetorically possible, but it makes so transparent the fact it's simply a political attack, and they'll go after this president on anything. If the president does too much in Syria, they'll go after him. If he does too little in Syria, even if he gets it just right in Syria, they'll go after him. But I think it couldn't be more obvious when they are trying to bring Obamacare into the Syria debate.
Congressman Adam Schiff and former Congressman Patrick Murphy, thank you both.